How can 8th graders understand others' lived experiences? Can mapping develop students' empathy? Hi, this is K Westgard, and I teach 8th grade global studies at Dilworth Glendon Felton Middle School, located in Dilworth, Minnesota. In light of the current Syrian and Afghan diaspora, for some time now, the placement of refugees has been a polarizing issue in our local communities. For my capstone activity, I chose to implement National Geographic's lesson collection on the Lost Boys of Sudan, particularly focusing on mapping the diaspora of Sudan's lost boys. National Geographic Learning Framework attributes found in this activity include the attitude of empathy, the skill of using geographic practices of mapping, and the acquiring of geographic knowledge. My students come from a fairly homogeneous demographic area, and I feel I need to provide students with an opportunity to empathize with our local refugee and immigrant communities. I chose the National Geographic Mapping a Diaspora activity because I felt students would gain a greater understanding of diaspora, refugee resettlement, as well as an opportunity to develop the attitude of empathy towards others and their lived experiences. What students learn from the Lost Boys' own human story can be applied to any refugee or immigrant settling in our community today and into the future. One social studies benchmark Minnesota students in 8th grade are expected to meet is to create and use various kinds of maps, including overlaying thematic maps of places in the world that incorporates points, lines, and colored areas to display spatial information. Based on this Minnesota benchmark, I chose the learning framework skill of using the geographic practices through mapping. Students were tasked with placing the routes the Lost Boys took on their journey to the United States onto copies of paper maps from National Geographic, and then transferring those routes to National Geographic's Mapmaker tool. After placing the Lost Boys routes on the National Geographic Mapmaker, students were to add different layers, such as climate, animal ranges, such as big cats, and food sources to show nourishment. This is all in order to get a sense of what it was like for these young Lost Boys to travel through some difficult terrain and environments. Students then had to collaborate and come up with plausible physical challenges and hazards of such a journey based on those maps, concluding with a written statement about the challenges of human displacement. As you can see here, many students felt that they didn't understand how people could do such a perilous journey. One student comments, "I have much more respect for the Lost Boys and refugees. Their lives are so much harder than ours. They have to work for a drink of water or food. We can get off the couch in our house and go to the refrigerator and get a drink of water without having to do anything." Another student stated, "I think it would be hard to do this migration because they did not have any food and did not have anything to drink either. I think it would affect a person by starving to death and being dehydrated, and they would be very sick. If I were in their shoes, I would try to find something to hold my water, and I would not stop unless I have to eat or drink." So as you can see from these responses, students are beginning to show empathy for other lived experiences. They wonder with curiosity how someone so young could accomplish such a difficult journey as they put themselves in the shoes of others. Through the mapping activities, students acquired geographic knowledge about Lost Boys at a variety of scales. I do hope that students can take this knowledge and apply it to different groups experiencing the same thing today, such as the human migration out of Syria and Afghanistan. As I was developing this activity, I realized I needed to talk with people at National Geographic about the new Mapmaker tool, as the new version is missing some data layers that would help students empathize with the Lost Boys' struggles during their journey through Africa. I reached out in hopes that down the road, data layers about climate and weather and animal ranges, such as big cats, and food and nourishment could be added. During a Zoom meeting with National Geographic's Sarah Appleton, Rachel Anderson, and Anita Palmer regarding the new National Geographic Mapmaker layers, We chatted about the needs in the new mapmaker for this activity to be successful. As the discussion continued, I gleaned different ways I could use data layers to help students make local to global connections using a measuring tool. As a result, students in the future will utilize a measuring tool to compare distances between global locations and local locations. I never thought of using the measuring tool to help give students a sense of distance in faraway places by comparing the same distance of a familiar local area to the unfamiliar faraway place. But for now, my students will need to use the Mapmaker Classic version to complete this activity. Some personal growth. I was curious how a mapping activity could contribute to students developing empathy. I learned that if students are provided an opportunity to visualize and analyze data, they could put themselves in the shoes of others more easily than if they were to just read a story. The visualizing and analyzing data through maps provided a level of active engagement that utilizes students' inference skills, which I think helped develop empathy. I think developing empathy in students is challenging, but if we as educators can provide opportunities for inferring and imagination, it's not impossible. Now, based on student responses, I'm hopeful that learners take into consideration other lived experiences before rushing to judgment. Since this lesson, students have been able to articulate more clearly that it's not easy coming to the United States. It is my hope this experience will help some of the students be more compassionate when we have new Americans join our class and know that doing so is not that easy.